tutorial is going to teach you a couple of tricks using the Sketchpad app. It's a completely free app, and so you would go into your web browser and type in sketch.io/sketchpad/. They have quite a few different versions that look similar, but this is the version that you want. It'll have Sketchpad 5.1 at the top, and it'll have a yellow and blue looking S. The other ones don't have as many functions as this version has. So we're going to learn today how to use the different brushes or stamps inside of this program. I like this program because it has so much of a variety of brushes, and so it could help you when you're trying to paint using expressive mark making. So the first thing you do is you go to the plus sign, and then we want to decide how big our canvas is going to be. If you have a low amount of pixels, so if you just start off with whatever canvas size they chose for you, it's going to be pretty low quality. And so I would choose at least 3000 by 3000 pixels. If you don't know how big pixels are, then you can change it to inches if you know what size you want to print this out at. And then for this class, we would be using the blank or the transparent background depending on the project. These other ones are not going to be very helpful for us. So we're going to choose blank, and we're going to hit create. Now we are really zoomed into the canvas, and so you always want to start by zooming out. Otherwise, you're going to be just drawing on a tiny little piece of it. And so if you click up here on the zoom button, this will pop up and you can resize it. Some of you might want to use Control plus or Control minus to zoom in or out. But there is an issue with that, and it makes everything smaller, including your toolbar. And so on this application, you just kind of stuck with using this tool. And I want to make sure I see all of it, so let me drag that down a little bit more. And even a little bit more. Okay. So I can see the entire thing. And now we are going to practice doing a sphere with your chosen mark. So prior to this demonstration, you should have looked at the different brushes, practiced on all over a canvas, and then kind of settled on a type of mark and a type of color that you might want to use. All of your brushes are located right here, and you can see it in this panel. These are your layers. They will pop up. So right now all we have is a background. And every mark you make gets put onto a new layer. And here is your undo button, or you can hit Control Z. Let's go back up to brushes. And your choices of brushes would be, these would be the basic different types of brushes that you could play around with. But I want to use the stamp tool. And after you have selected the stamp tool, then you can play around with the different stamps. We're going to practice doing a three-dimensional sphere, so you can decide if the stamp or the brush that you're choosing is too difficult for you or not. And so before we get into using the stamp, let's go ahead and click on the shape tool, which right now is a star. And so when you look up there, whatever shape you were on last, that's what you will see here. Click down here and click the circle. And we do not want to fill, so to get rid of a fill, you just click on the eyedropper and then it says no fill. And we do want an outline, so that's fine. Here you wouldn't start at the top corner of the sphere, you start at the middle and drag it out. And make it pretty large. Don't let it fall off the edge, but that should be fine. It's off-center. This is just a practice, so that's fine. Then I want you to select the paint bucket tool, and I'll explain why later. Click on fill, and then click on color, and let's just make it gray so we can tell that it got filled. You are going to not do a vector fill, you're going to do a pixel fill, and then you're going to click on the outside. So we're coloring the outside of that. I don't think I really want to, let me Control Z. I thought I chose a color. Let me do a color again. We are click on there. We want this to be toned gray just so we can see it. If I colored it white, I wouldn't have been sure if I colored it or not. This is going to become a mask that helps us see our sphere later. So don't worry about that for now. We're going to color outside the edges, and then we're going to bring this layer back to the surface to hide all of our messy marks. Okay, I'm going to go back to my stamp tool, or you can go to your brush tool or whatever it is that you're using. And I'm going to look at the large variety of stamps that they offer. And I already tried out previous to this a pretty cool one. If I could find it again, it's a little bit like a lightning bolt. Let's see. Okay, I've gone too far. Start back at the top. Oh, here it is. Okay. And let me move this. All right. So you can play with scale, rotation, size, and I want to see what the biggest size would look like. So that isn't quite as big as I want it. I just want it kind of large to begin with, and then I'll make it smaller as I go. So that looks like it might be pretty good. Rotation means every time it stamps, it's going to change rotations. And so when I click and drag, it's going to keep flipping that shape around. If you want that shape to be all the same direction, then stop your rotation from spinning around. But I kind of do want it. Let me see, scale. What does it look like? Okay. You can change your opacity right here, and if you want it to be more transparent, and I'll show you that later, but you can take that from 100 down to like 50, and that is too much. So Control Z. I am going to take the scale down. Let me see. Yeah, that would kind of help me kind of cover some of this ground a little bit. So when I'm doing a sphere, I want it to be darker. I always do it darker on the left-hand side, and then I have it a little bit of value kind of creeping in around these sides. Let me just kind of quickly put a little bit of value in here. And then I'm going to work with white, layers of white, and then opaque layers to help me get more detail on this. So now I'm going to go back to the white. I'm going to throw some of that in where the light might be reflecting. And then I'm going to take my opacity down. If you click here, then that takes away the fill color. And then it pops up over there. You don't want this to be engaged at all right now. So you got to change your transparency by highlighting it. And I'm going to go with 25% and see what happens there. And I'm going to start kind of like with a little bit, I don't know, milky in color. So I'm going to just kind of feather out the white to the black by adding this transparent layer to it. Going up in here. And then I'm going to, I don't like this jump, and so then I'm going to work the other way and do some black, still at the 25%. And I'm going to just try to blend these values together so that it doesn't have that awkward jump. I'm going to do a better job getting at the edges up here. I could change my opacity lower and lower, so maybe we do 10% here as I try to blend this out. And maybe a little bit more. And then maybe I'll go back with just some pure white. So you just go back and forth with layers that are more transparent, less transparent. You could have, instead of black and white, you can have any colors. I could have yellow for my light color, like a dark blue for my dark color. I could have the whole color of the rainbow. I could have yellow be my value 1, orange be like a value 2, red be a value 3, and so on. So if you're expressing something that's really playful, maybe you have playful colors. Okay, I'm going to just put on, let's see, let me choose my color. And then I'm going to put on a couple stronger whites. Oops, get rid of that. See how that happens. And let's go to 80%. Let's just put Control D. That was too much of a jump. So let's go with 16%. See what happens there. And I could do like individual ones as I'm getting closer to being done with it. When I drag it, obviously it puts on quite a bit more. The nice thing about this program is you can create completely expressive artworks that you wouldn't be able to create traditionally, because that mark wouldn't be as consistent if you were doing this traditionally, because it's such a weird mark. I kind of go through and I look at, okay, so that's my shadow edge. I don't have any reflected light in there, so maybe I can go back and add some of that. This kind of looks a little bit bare, and so maybe I'll put a couple lights there and then go back on top and add a couple more blacks. And maybe I'll get a little bit darker right there. Kind of feather it out by doing individual ones if it's putting it on too strong. So we're trying to look for some nice value changes where it's not, jumping quite too much. That looked a little bare right there, so adding it there. And if I was doing this for the expressive mark project, I would have smaller marks that I was doing around the edges of this sphere so that it wasn't really going out quite as far. Now let me add, let's go with the white again, but let's make it really transparent. Let's go with 20. And I want to have a little reflected light right here. Let's see how that looks. That's too much. Control Z. Just a little bit. So it goes like light, dark, light again. Going back to some black at that 20%. Going across. And then once you have it the way you like it, you don't think you have any jumps or too many jumps. Have a few right there. Maybe one more time with the white. Going back again. You get the idea. The trick is going to be to play with your layers. And so the downside of Sketchpad or Sketch.io is the layers, you can't control them quite as much. You see how there's like a million marks that I've made, and you have to scroll all the way down. In other programs, it's easier to get them to stay where you want them. And there is a function before we do this that you could play with that it says paint onto layer, but I had a little bit of a hard time with that. So I'm just letting all these layers pile up. And then I am going back down to my pixel fill, is what it will be called. That's when we added the gray in the background. And I'm going to drag that all the way to the top. I have to stop halfway. And drag it even further. And you see how it's kind of cleaning up those edges for us. So just a quick trick on this one. Okay, all the way to the top. And then there you have your sphere. When it comes to saving, and I'm not a technology person, it seems to save on its own when I re-sign in on that computer that I'm using. It happens to just be there, but I don't necessarily trust that. So I would go to Export, and then I would click on, Save Sketchpad and save the actual Sketchpad file so that you can open it up with all the layers somewhere on your computer. And I would do that after I was done working on it every single time, because you never know, like, where are these things saving? I don't know. And instead of choosing just JPEG, PNG, or whatever from there, I want you to hit save, because then it gives you more control. So dots per inch, we don't want low quality, so we probably want to choose 300 dots per inch, and let's go ahead and make this a JPEG. If you wanted a transparent background for your artwork, then you would choose like a PNG for that. Okay, so JPEG 300, go ahead and click on scale, and then you want it to be the original size. You don't want it to blow it up to twice the size or anything weird like that. And then you click on download, and then that is what you're going to use to submit to me so I can see the type of mark that you are planning on making. And that's it.